just think on it. And I said, what if we did a challenge where I tried to get 50 people qualified for Boston, and then we all go to Boston? And so she was like, yeah, maybe. And then within like one sip of her wine or whatever, I created the Facebook page, created the challenge, and then it just kind of took off from there.
We welcome you into Running for Coverage. This is episode 8. Next week, we're going to be taking a week off for Independence Day when it falls on a Tuesday there. It's one of those weeks where I don't think a lot of work is going to get done around town. Maybe a little bit of running and a lot of fun for Independence Day. Hope you have a safe and festive 4th of July. But we'll give you this one, give you a chance to sort of take the break on things and then get back to it once the holiday week is pushed to the side. A couple of things that we're going to have coming up for you here today. You just heard from Paul McRae, the founder of PRS Running Club and a big figure in the local running scene. We're going to have a lot of Paul today. We're going to hear about his history in running and how he started PRS and what happened, how it all got going. You heard him there talking about a huge push he had to get some friends to join him for his 50th birthday at the Boston Marathon. That was a huge success. We've talked to some who ran up there in Boston already here on the podcast. We'll hear more about that. Plus Paul's bit of running gear he doesn't run without. And what I think may be most valuable is if you want a running coach, I asked Paul the kind of questions, and he coaches, of course, so he has answered these questions a lot. But his questions about what you should ask a prospective running coach before you decide you're going to go with this man or woman to help you improve in your running. And Paul said some very interesting things and I think some great questions to consider once you get into it. So we'll get to that here in just a bit. But first, let's look back on the weekend that was. On Friday, the SUP Bridge the Gap 5K over the Fuller Warren Bridge. The SUP, the Shared Use Pathway. SUP is a much better way to say it. Justin Holstein won the 5K 19:38, and Claire Domingo came in for the women at 20:51. So congratulations on the wins there. I need to talk to some folks who ran that about what it was like running in a race. There are some when you run, say the river run, and they close down traffic, and you're running over a bridge. You run over the Green Monster. Half of the traffic is blocked, obviously, for where the runners are. Well, this way, the runners are running basically right next to traffic, separated by that little area between the bridge and the SUP. So interesting to see what that experience was like. I'll talk to some folks about that. Also, there was the Summer Sizzler Track Series, the 1 mile. I think this was at Wolfson High School that they did this one. And boy, were there some fast runners. Matthew Tadeo, 4:29, just outkicked Michael Remick at 4:30 on the men's side. On the women's side, Laura Campbell, 4:57. She went sub 5 minutes. Julia Budendorf, 5:11. 6 of the 30 participants ran sub 5 minutes. 12 more ran sub 6. So some fast runners out there in the heat running in the 1 mile. Coming up, we mentioned 4th of July weekend's coming up. And on July 4th, the Celebration 5K. That is the first Grand Prix race of the 2023-2024 season. And we just wrapped up the previous season. But that will go from First Place Sports in Bay Meadows. And as we mentioned to you last week, the High School 912 is partnering with Clay County Cross Country, or with Clay County rather, and the Jacksonville Athletic Club for the inaugural Cross Country Invitational. That's September the 9th, 2023. And coming up in next month, once we hit the month of July fully, we'll have a giveaway for you involved with that one. So that should be plenty of fun. All right, that sort of sums up what's happening in the early portion and what has happened in terms of last week and looking ahead. When we come back, we'll hear from Paul McRae, the founder of PRS Running Club and the guy who ran internationally for New Zealand. We'll hear his story when we come back right here on Running for Coverage.
As we continue on here on Running for Coverage, I am so happy to be able to bring on Paul McRae, When you start talking about people who've had an influence on the running scene in Jacksonville, there aren't a lot that can top what Paul has done. Uh, Ran for New Zealand, his home country, brought the Kiwi logo here, and with the PRS Running Club and race team, and the coaching and the positive reinforcement. It's been really something to see what Paul has done with the running scene in Jacksonville. So, Paul, welcome. Let's start. I want to get because I don't think I've ever asked you this. How did you first get involved in running back in New Zealand?
So I all kudos has to go to my dad, to be honest. My mom was 16 and my dad was 20 when they had my brother and I, and we were obviously twins. And so right before my mom was pregnant, my dad was running pretty competitively. He still loves to explain how he ran this road race in Auckland where we kind of grew up and everything, where he beat John Walker in a 5K road race. Now, for those that don't know who John Walker is, he's one of the New Zealand's top milers that has ever run or competed for New Zealand. He's won, Olympic gold in the mile. He's the first guy to break the 4 minute mile 100 times in his career. So it's, anyway. So my dad talks about how he beat him in this 5K race. Now, to be honest, John Walker just finished the Olympics. He'd taken some time off, but my dad doesn't like to talk about that. And so, my brother and I were always pretty active, and my dad just said, running was always good for me, and let's get you out there and doing it. So yeah, just kind of one of those things, and we kind of didn't really get serious. Well, a couple of things. We didn't really get serious until we were about 15 when we actually got a coach. When we're the first that really time my brother and I really thought we could be any good. We're in elementary school, and we had this teacher who believed that her kids either walked or ran every day before class for 20 to 30 minutes, they would concentrate better and handle work better. And so she made us, it was religious, every day when we were 9 and 10, do this loop around the grass area of our school. And as a reward, we would get, when we made it to certain parts of New Zealand, because she'd add up miles, and we'd run from Auckland all the way down to Wellington, all the way down to other parts of New Zealand. And when we got to a big city, she'd give us this healthy candy, which was like, and so my brother and I made it there and back all of New Zealand 3 times before the end of the school year. And so it just kind of went, went from there. So.
And when did you started to say when you got serious? Well, that's when you realized you might have an ability or
Yeah.
something to do this. So, but when did you get serious about it?
So probably when I was 15, already started high school, and we got this coach. He was an older guy in town, but he had coached a bunch of people that were pretty good. And so he just put us on a training plan, um, gave us workouts every week, and then also made us run long on Sundays from one of the local clubs. It's a little set up a little differently in New Zealand, where there are these huge clubs and their inner city rivalries. And so we would join this running club with all these older guys, and they would make us run these and tremendous hills called the Waiataruas, which is where Peter Snell and all the famous New Zealand runners kind of trained. And that's when every week we try to beat our times on these courses, and then that translated into running track and winning, age group championships, winning Auckland, which is the area we grew up, winning like the Auckland city champs. It's kind of like state champs, and then going on to New Zealand champs, and just kind of took off from there.
And you ran representing New Zealand.
Yes.
Do you remember the first race you ran where you were representing your country?
Yes, I ran. It was called Oceania Games, and there was basically the Pacific Island people, the Australian, and then New Zealand all came together in Auckland, and it was like like a almost like a Pan American Games type situation. And I ran the 10K, and I still remember it to the day. My coach said, "Do not go out too fast." And he, like the way he used to coach us, is he would blow his whistle every 100 meters, so that if we crossed the 100-meter line at each of those points on the track 4 times, and we were ahead, we would know because the whistle would go after we crossed that line. So it made us keep on pace. And anyway, the amazing thing was he kept track of every split. He had it on his whistle on this little note card, and he'd blow his whistle. So he knew how fast I could run. And essentially, I went out at the pace that he asked me to do, and I won the whole race. I lapped everyone except for the 2 Australians in the field, and ran like 31 minutes I think I was 18 as an 18-year-old. So
So at that point, you have to be thinking, "Gosh, I might be able to
yeah,
represent New Zealand in the Olympics."
yeah, yes.
So how close did you get?
That's I didn't get close. I'd like to say I got close, but it's one of those things. In New Zealand, it's not like the America where you go to some big trials. We have so few people that are at that level that if you hit those qualifying times and you're one of the top three, then you obviously would get to go. If there was a fourth person, they would take the top 3 times. At least back in my day, I know it's changed a little bit for the New Zealand now. They do have national champs, and you got to win your national championship or place in the top three. But back in my day, you just had to run these times. So I got close about 30 seconds in the 5K. So still, if you think about it, that's 2.5 seconds a lap faster than I had to go 2.5 seconds faster per lap to actually make it. Um, and then in the marathon, I've never really finished a good marathon. We'll probably talk about that later. And I ran 2:27, and the time was 2:19 in order to go. So I gained 10 minutes, but 30 seconds a mile faster. If I could do that, then I probably would have made it. So, I did make it to a couple other New Zealand teams. They were world mountain running champs, which I've loved hills. I love running downhill. I love trails. And that was just my first experience there. I got 33rd in the world, which was the highest place of a first-time person for New Zealand, which was kind of a big deal for me. Um, but yeah, that's probably the closest I've ever been to the Olympics.
All right, so you come this close
Yeah.
to making an Olympic team, and then at some point you wind up in the United States. How did it happen?
Well, I was a teacher. I trained to be a teacher for a little bit, and I took up teaching basically 7th, 8th, and ninth 9-year-olds, and decided I didn't like it very much. I like teaching. I just didn't like all the paperwork and all the bureaucracy in New Zealand about it. And so I thought, well, what am I going to do now? I was always enjoyed and loved doing things outdoors. And so there was a bit of time where I worked for like a corporate team building high ropes camp place, and that was I loved doing that. I loved getting people out of their comfort zone. And then decided, well, I can't do this forever. And there was a school in America that was looking for a runner, and I said, let's do it. And so I got on a plane in August and came to Savannah, Georgia, and this small little school, Division 2 school, and it was eye-opening. I was the fastest on the team by a lot, and it didn't really make me any better. So after a year, I actually transferred to where my brother was, which was out in Colorado, and we had a huge team. While we were out there, we won 4 national titles at cross country as a team. Um, so that kind of worked out better, and that just made me a better runner.
How different is it for you in terms of the payback you get when you're running for a team versus when you're running for yourself?
I mean, I like to think of it as two separate entities. I mean, honestly, when we were doing cross country, it was all about the team. Yes, we still cared about our individual placing, but honestly, we would. The coach out there, Dwayne Vandenbush, he's a legend out there. He's been at the same school for 30 years. He's and was a history professor, and honestly, he just the way he would have these speeches the night before, these cross country meets, and you know, he would talk about history, like um, Winston Churchill, and he'd have all these amazing like one-liners that would we I don't know how we slept after some of these these meetings, because he would get us so pumped up, call us the big red machine is going to get ready to roll because we always wore red, and uh and that just made everyone on the team kind of come together, and we just would die for each other pretty much. And so I mean, I think that's really important to if you, it's better to have a bunch of people around you, and I think that's how, you know, even in these professional teams today, that's how they get a lot better, is because they have other people that can, you know, pull a workout when they're not feeling as good, or, you know, it just helps better people foster better results. And then
I want to
individually,
circle.
obviously, we wanted to, we always wanted to go after our own times and stuff, but that seems a little bit more, I don't know, narcissistic, I think.
Well, listen, everybody's got to be motivated in some way,
Yes.
because it's not easy
No.
going out there and running. I don't care if you're running at a world class level or if you're a mid packer at a local 5K. It's not easy.
No. No.
If you're going to be competitive or try to improve, so
Yeah.
wherever you can get it, I think. But I do want to circle back to that
Yeah.
point about the group dynamic here in a second. How'd you wind up in Jacksonville?
So after finishing college in Colorado, I finished with a major in psychology, and so, you know, there's not a lot you can do job wise with just a bachelor's degree with a major in psychology, and so I wanted to become a psychologist, a psychiatrist, whatever. And I'd known the UNF, University of North Florida, cross country and track coach from when I ran in Savannah, and he was looking for a grad assistant. And so I applied to the grad program for psychology to become a therapist, and they accepted me. And then Mark Van Alstyne, the coach at UNF, kind of said, "We'll pay for accommodation, we'll pay for classes, we'll give you a stipend for food and everything, and you just come and look after the teams." And so that's how I ended up here. And so it
The
was
rest
amazing.
is history in
Yeah.
some regard.
Yeah.
So here you are in your early to mid 20s,
Yeah.
in a new city in Jacksonville. Um, how did you go from that to starting PRS?
So I was working for a running store here in town for it's kind of like extra money while I was a grad assistant at UNF. And every day it seemed like someone would come in and say, "Do you know that whether there's a coach in town?" And it kind of just organically grew from there. So I started coaching a few people, and then I said, "Well, why don't I have group runs?" And back then it was called Personal Running Solutions, and it was just me. And I still laugh at because there's sometimes the memories come up on my Facebook memories, and there'll be me with a backpack having everyone's waters in the back, riding my bike, showing them the course of the route that we're running on a Saturday, and just and so now it's evolved into this huge big thing. But like I said, there's a Jacksonville Track Club in town, and they do their thing. There's Florida Striders, and they do their thing. But I think what was missing, at least back then, and it's a testament to how PRS Running Club has kind of grown, is there was this missing um, kind of like community camaraderie that was missing, and it just kind of blew up from there.
Yeah,
So
I will say before I was sort of aware of what PRS was, I was aware that it was a thing and that there were a lot of really good runners who were involved in it. When I was first kind of getting into running, the thing that jumped out at me is I remember being at the Wolfson 55K, and you were setting up at the start line, and you were operating there, and I went over there. I was tying my shoes, getting ready for my lap, and you said, "Oh, hey, Cole." And I don't even know if we had met at that point, maybe in passing or something.
yeah,
But and I was like, "Oh, hey," and I knew who you were, and uh, then I thought, well, that was awfully nice of him to recognize me. And then you said hi to like seven other people right behind me, and I'm like, and he just, I think it's sort of natural for you. And
yeah,
my brother, my brother lived in New Zealand for a while, so I know sort of the New Zealand personality. which is very warm and open and all about friends and family. And but even people who have that sort of natural in their lives don't always actively put that in place. And I wonder if at any point, because how many people are in PRS now? How many
As of
members?
today, because we had one new member, we're at like 565.
I mean, that's a remarkable number. And do you feel like you actively have to find ways to engage? Obviously, social media is around now at a different level than it was before, but like just as a person, or is it just easy and natural for you?
I mean, honestly, it's just who I am. I'm not going to change anything. I mean, with some of the social media stuff, I've had to adapt and kind of change a little bit. I get worried that, because I'm older now, that, all these young groups are going to come and take over. But it's good having my wife, Lydia, who runs, and she puts it into perspective. She's like, yeah, those 20 somethings are probably not going to get up at 5 a.m. in the morning because they want they want their sleep and they want to start running at 7 a.m. And I think honestly for me, it's just this is who I am. I'm not going to change. I love the sport. I love what it's done for me. I love the way that we can be anywhere in the world for that matter, see parts of the city that you probably wouldn't already see if you weren't running. And then there's that fellowship between people that, it doesn't matter if you run a 15-minute mile or a 4-minute mile, the motivation and the consistency and the effort level to get to whatever that goal is that people are trying to searching for is the same.
And I've used the phrase 100 times of shared agony. I mean, that's really what it is, right? We've
It
all
is. Yeah.
we all go through this, and when you have just gone through it, and I'll just tell a little bit of a story here. There was a 5K and 10K in Springfield a couple of years ago, and I had run the 5K and ran a pretty decent time for what I was running at that point. I had a lot of friends who were running the 10K, and so who were really good runners. So it was only a few minutes before some of the top runners started coming into the same finish line for the 10K. And I was, I was there kind of getting a banana and a donut and whatever else I could put my hands on,
Yeah.
and grabbed a water and saw somebody come in, gave them a water, chatted with them about it, how went on their 10K. Then the next, so I find myself sort of, because I was and still am slow compared to these top runners. The timing of it worked out great, and um, even though they had run twice as far as I had in almost half the time, that we all had just pushed ourselves, and so that shared agony thing. When it's happening in the moment, it's very obvious, but in some of the conversations I've had on this podcast here, the first 6, 7 episodes, everybody I've talked to is faster than me. But we all have experienced kind of the same kind of thing as we try to push through. So, from a coaching standpoint, when you're coaching, how do you have the same? Is it the same type of coaching advice, guidance as you would give to somebody running a 15-minute 5K versus a 15-minute mile?
Yeah, I mean, the concepts are the same, right? Like, I like to say that there's only so many workouts that you can give an athlete in order for them to be better, and to me, it always comes back to working with someone's strengths to improve their weaknesses, and that can be anything from more running, faster running, mentally what they can put their bodies through, or even helping them believe that they can do something that they never thought was possible. And I think that's the common thing, that no matter whether you're running the Olympics or running your first 5K, those things can be legitimately the same, just different levels. And so I think for me as a coach, it's figuring out, and I like to think that this is probably what I'm good at, what the person needs pretty soon, pretty early on, that's going to get them to whatever their goal is. I like to say in therapy, because I'm a therapist, I might have like 100 things that I want my client who's come to me with anxiety. Um, I might have 100 things that I want them to improve or to be better about, but it doesn't really matter what I think. It matters what that person is bringing to me. So if that person says, I want to run a 15-minute 5K, then I'm going to use those strengths that that person has to kind of get them to that, and figure out what those weaknesses are, and let's try to make them better.
I want to do a deep dive on one of your. I'm gonna call him a star pupil.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, then I don't know what you're talking about. And that's Mark Burgett, who we had on last week.
Yes.
And he is just, I mean, he is just a machine. He is just
Yeah.
unbelievable in what he can do. And he told us that when he first started running, he was just, maybe running like 3 miles,
Yeah.
maybe. And then decided he wanted to do something bigger and got connected with you, and you started coaching him. And here's what he said about Paul McRae, his coach.
Coaching for me has been everything in the world. Paul McRae has been my coach now for 10 years. We kind of got together after the Donna race, my second marathon. And I ran 2:59 there, and he took me from a 2:59 down to a 2:40 in less than 6 months. I had absolutely no clue what I was doing when it came to running, before I met Paul. And he's, been everything. He's been a best friend to me. He's taught me everything. Everything I know about running is through Paul. I absolutely knew nothing.
So, what's your reaction to what Mark said?
I mean, I think, we all know, and especially you being in the business you've been in before now, you have those people that don't really know or understand just how good they can be. And it was pretty evident early on that Mark was so green that he didn't truly appreciate the gifts he has. And so my goal was just to kind of take him and show him the way, because he has all the genetics to be as awesome as he wants to be. And so it's been a pleasure to kind of coach him and watch him kind of grow. And I don't think he's done yet. We're working now, and I'm not sure whether he told you, but come July 16th, he's going to try to run 7 marathons in 7 days, all under 3 hours.
I mean, he's done 8 marathons in a week before in training for the
Yeah.
Spartathlon. So, I mean, you will not find me voting or betting against Mark Burgett. His mental toughness. I mean, you talk
Yes.
about the genetics, the physical genetics, but his mental toughness
Oh.
it is off the charts. The
Mm-hmm.
fact that he is able to train, he doesn't need variety. In
No.
fact, variety almost
Makes it
is a
worse.
distraction for him. You can give him just do this 100 times, he'll do it 100 times.
Yeah.
And it's not very few people can do that and succeed.
Yeah. And I'll tell you this, there's this one workout he's been begging me to let him do. And most people just would never even consider it, right? So we'll go and do 5 by a mile. So 5 by 4 laps with 1 minute rest on the track. So it's a lot of laps. It's like 20 laps. Well, he got this bright idea in his head that he wants to do 20 by 1 mile on the track. We get there at 5. He was going to get there at 4, get his first 10 done or 12 done, and then start running with the other guys in the group who were about his pace. And so he got through all 20 with 1 minute recovery and averaged 5:48 for the whole thing.
And
Like, there was
probably the variance in his laps was probably 1 or 2 seconds too. He is
yeah,
a
it
metronome.
was nuts. I don't know how I do know how he does it, but it like blows my mind every time I see something like that.
So,
So
right, so that's one end of the scale.
yes.
On the other end of the scale, you have runners who are doing this because they need to get back into shape or need to find some activity that is important for them that they can really sink their teeth into, and they're never going to be running, the Keys 100 or the Spartathlon,
No.
and maybe their goal race is just to run a 5K or to run the river run or whatever that might be. Um, what kind of feedback does that give you to work with those kind of runners too? Because it's anybody could find something positive to working with Mark Burgett, but
Yes.
um,
Yeah.
the others could be tougher.
Yeah, I think for them it's finding those little wins, those little glimpses of positive interspersed within the hard stuff, the stuff that they feel like they're failing, and really building on those. I think honestly, I try to coach in a way where yes, it's monotonous, it's boring most of the time. We don't want to do it. But those are the type of people that I feel like I give more feedback to initially because they're the ones that need that attaboys or the positive reinforcement to say you couldn't even run 2 minutes last week without stopping and now you're doing 5. Like those are the things that, and I honestly those give me just as much joy in the coaching aspect as someone like Mark who can run 26 miles in 2:30. But again, it's finding those little things or what that person needs in order to feel like they're achieving and they're accomplishing something.
Yeah, it's when you're just beginning or just restarting, as I kind of am right now. Um, it's very easy to feel the pain.
Yes.
Sometimes you don't see the incremental improvement unless somebody points it out to you, or unless you're really fastidious in terms of tracking your data, something like that. Because sometimes it still feels bad. It still feels
Oh,
bad when
no,
you push yourself.
I
You
know.
know, you just want to see where it turns out on the other end. Um, I wanted to ask you about coaching and what you think coaching can do for somebody. And this is not intended to be a pitch for you as a coach specifically, but what kind of runners should consider a coach and what should they consider when they're choosing a coach if they decide to go in that direction?
Yeah, I mean, I think when someone's looking for a coach, they need to first meet with them and try to get a feel for what kind of uh, what the premise of their kind of program kind of is. A lot of people believe in big miles. Obviously that's being an athletic guy, and that's a New Zealand coach who's amazing. Believe in the high mileage, but that can when I say high mileage, most people think, oh my gosh, I'm going to do 100 miles a week. But a big mileage week for someone like you who's getting back into it, maybe, 10 or whatever. And so I think if you can actually have that conversation with a coach and kind of feel what what their plan is, like this is where you are now, how are you going to get me to my goal? And they truly listen to you. That's the kind of person that you want. And there's plenty of coaches out there, and I'm first to admit that I may not be the coach that everyone needs or does or wants. And I'm a big believer in if I don't work out for you, then just tell me and we'll find someone else for you to go to. Like I said, there's not one way to there's only so many workouts that someone can give. It's the extra stuff, the stuff that you need from that coach that makes the difference. And so if you need a lot of feedback, you know, then that's probably a good reason to go with someone like me. If you need someone who gives you a plan and you're so OCD that you're just going to follow it, then, there's plenty of other coaches out there that will kind of give you that. Um, I've always said though, and this is a little bit different, if you want to go for the Olympic trials, then you should probably have someone who has also been to the Olympic trials or been to the Olympics. I always tell Keith if I ever got an athlete that I felt Keith Brantley, and you've had him on. If I ever got someone who I thought had that possibility, then eventually I would probably push that person, whoever they are, over to Keith because he's been to the Olympics. He's tried 4 times to make the Olympics before he even got there, and so he knows exactly what is needed, probably more than myself. So if you're going for a goal that I have not accomplished myself, then I would probably tell you you need to go to someone else.
Speaking of goals and accomplishments, I did want to finish up by talking about your 50th birthday experience. You rallied around 100 runners from Jacksonville to qualify for and run in the Boston Marathon. Um, that what I mean, first of all, that's a testament to the community that you've built and continue to nurture. But also that 100 people from Jacksonville qualified for Boston is pretty great.
I mean, honestly, my Lydia, my wife, makes fun of me all the time because I'll have these crazy ideas, and she'll say to me, "I don't think you should do it. I mean, you should sleep on it. I don't think you should do it." So the night that I came up with the idea, I said, I said to her, you know what if I need some kind of plan because I'm going to turn 50 and I don't want to think about it. And it needs to be about other people. What can we do? And she didn't know. She was like, I don't know, just think on it. And I said, what if we did a challenge where I tried to get 50 people qualified for Boston and then we all go to Boston? And so she was like, yeah, maybe. And then within like one sip of her wine or whatever at night, I created the Facebook page, created the challenge, and then it just kind of took off from there. There were people who were messaging me from all over the country saying, I'm gone, I'm gonna do it. What do I need to do? And so it kind of just blew up. I think we had 51 people before like about a month into it. And so at that point I said, well, let's just see how many people I can get. And
When you went up 96 or something like that, 97,
98. Yeah.
98.
Yeah. It's
Great.
amazing. I can't, I mean, it still blows my mind how just as what I thought was an idea to stop me from thinking about turning 50 just blew up into this crazy thing. And there was a moment, I wasn't there, but one of the other runners who, thought he was going to run well, kind of was crossing the finish line in Boston, and the announcer, which I hadn't said anything to the announcer, but I guess they kind of figured it out, said over the loudspeaker, and here comes Gabe Aza from Jacksonville PRS Running Club. They had 98 people here at the event because of their coach's 50th birthday. I'm like, who could write a better? I mean,
Right.
it's just nuts to me. Yeah.
All right. So what's the next crazy idea?
Well, it's funny you should say that. We should be finding out any day now. Again, I'm signing up for London Marathon. It's a true lottery, and we must have had 55 people kind of sign up, and so we won't know. I think it's coming out in the next couple of weeks who's going to make it because this was a record year. They had 588,000 people apply. That's 100,000 more than ever before, and they only take 45,000 people. So chances are we won't make it. But
You never know. Fingers crossed.
Great stuff there from Paul, and he has made such a big impact on the running scene in Jacksonville, no doubt about that. We do want to remind you to sign up for the newsletter. Easiest way to do that is to go to my Twitter at Cole Pepper, or check it out on Instagram at Running for Coverage, and sign up for a free weekly newsletter. It's a great way for you to stay in touch with what's going on within the running community, as well as win prizes every week. We will be announcing next week the winner of the month of June's prize pack from Tucker Cycles in Jacksonville, in Avondale. They put together a prize pack that will be great for runners as well. Holt Tucker is a great guy, has been a big supporter for a long time, and both of the triathlon and biking communities, and so by proxy, the running community as well. So check out Tucker Cycles of Avondale. All right, also, every week we talk about some bit of gear, and we find a raving fan. Well, this is a full Paul McRae episode. So here's Paul McRae's gear review, the gear he loves to run with.
I think my favorite thing currently is the Nike Next Percent shoes as a training shoe. I feel like they're the right amount of cushion. They last a long period of time in terms of miles, and they give you that spring. Now that I'm a little bit older, I feel like it helps with recovery. I'm not as sore, and that's my go-to shoe. I hope Nike never changes it or discontinues it, but chances are they probably will. That's what they tend to do. But that would be the one thing I wouldn't run without right now.
And finally, every week we have a coaching tip, and this time it's about coaches. As we mentioned, Paul does a lot of coaching of athletes. And I asked him if you're looking to get into finding a coach, if you have some goals in your running that you want to improve on, what should you ask a coach before you decide, yeah, I'm going to put my faith in you?
I think when you're looking for a coach, you need to ask a couple of things. One would be, what their philosophy is on mileage. Do they think there should be some strength training? How many do they consider your life situation and they will work around you instead of you working around them? Someone that is accessible if you have questions, and that's not to say they have to be accessible all the time, just someone who responds in the right amount of time. And then there was something else. Oh, and then probably someone who can explain how they're going to take you from where you are to what your ultimate goal is, and develop or share with you. Doesn't mean they have to give you the whole plan all at once, but can tell you what you need to hear in order to feel like you've got some confidence in that coach.
Some great questions to consider if you're looking for a coach, and there's some good ones in Jacksonville, no doubt about that. So that will do it for this installment of Running for Coverage. Our thanks to Darren Ronan, the Ronan School of Music, who composed and performed our music throughout the course of this podcast. Check him out at the Ronan School of Music. And again, we'll be off next week for 4th of July, and then we'll come back the following week with a new installment, and should have plenty to talk about after the first Grand Prix race of the year. Thanks so much for watching and listening to Running for Coverage. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, Amazon, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, and we'll talk to you in our next installment right here.